And welcome into another episode of Dan D'Antoni Sports. My name is Dan Snyder, joined tonight by Dan Beebe. Dan, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good, Dan. How's it going?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. Unfortunately, we don't have Tony Casper or Dan O'Shea tonight, but we do have Dan O'Shea here in spirit.
Yes.
And we'd like to congratulate him because this past weekend, our boy Dan got married.
That he did.
Congratulations to Dan O'Shea and his new beautiful bride.
Yep.
He's not here, and I don't want to just say her name.
Right.
But congratulations to the Mrs. O'Shea. Dan, we got a great show tonight.
Action-packed.
Action-packed is just such a great way to phrase it. We're going to talk college football. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk Antonio Brown. If we have time, we're going to sneak in a little bit of college baseball, professional baseball.
I don't even pay attention to college baseball. You're going way out in left field on that one, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you very much about college baseball except that LSU is like the team in the SEC from what I read. So anyways, let's stop talking about college baseball and let's get into college football. First thing I want to know, what was your biggest surprise of the week?
Oh, man. For me, I'd have to say that, well, of course, USC off to a great start has kind of been a little bit of a surprise to me, especially this past week with the backup QB. But I would have to say probably my favorite game of the whole week, the biggest surprise out of everything I saw had to be Michigan versus Army.
That was such a good game. I hate saying it because I hate Michigan, but that was probably the game of the week.
Easily. I mean, going in, I know for a fact, I think they said Army was a 20-point underdog. Fought hard just the whole game. Like, if you were watching it, I started watching it at noon. I had to, go up to see some relatives at home. But it was that kind of game where you just had to keep watching a little bit more. You didn't want to leave it. So on the way traveling, I have Sirius XM in my car. Not endorsed, by the way, but great service. Was able to find the game on there, and it was, back and forth. They had tied it up at 14. And it was one of those games where you're like, it's got to be close. It seemed like it just wasn't going to, nobody was going to pull away even after halftime. And then once I got to where I had to go, I had to do a few things outdoors, but I'm like, started raining. I'm like, this is the perfect excuse to just sit and finish watching this game. It was just that entertaining.
It absolutely was very entertaining. Such a great game. And for me, it's extremely memorable because this is always going to stick with me, I think. The last play before the fumble that ended the game, which, by the way, Michigan won in double overtime. Army, if that quarterback had just pitched the ball, the running back or fullback, whichever it was, had a clear lane to the end zone, and the defensive end and linebacker had both bit down to stop the quarterback run. If he had just looked up for a fraction of a second and pitched it, that game is over. Army wins. Yeah,
it was so frustrating seeing. I mean, traditionally here's a team that all they do is pretty much run the ball all the time, and that, you go for the pass, which isn't necessarily the strong suit, and that for the game to end like that was disappointing. Sorry to cut you off, but even more so, it's like to the point where they had it lined up to get the field goal and to end up having to miss,
Yeah, I mean the one to end the quarter or the end the game. Or
which was like the tail end of the fourth quarter, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So I don't know if this is correct, but I believe that was the first field goal that kicker has ever attempted.
Well, I mean,
crazy.
We were just, really hoping he would have gotten it. Of all, I mean, if you have to miss everything else after the fact, but that would have been a huge upset.
Yeah, I personally believe that the Army team is just vastly underrated. They should have been a top 25 team to begin with, and the fact that they weren't is kind of a joke.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Either Army-Navy games, I always seem to find, I love the tradition, of course, of the Army-Navy game, but, I always like to keep track of both teams, see how they're doing, and it's just entertaining, football. Like, you'd like to, who doesn't like to root for both of them at times?
Well, when one of the teams is Michigan, I don't like to root for them.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest surprise was Maryland with their dominating
Syracuse
performance over Syracuse, and you called it because you picked Maryland to beat Syracuse.
That I did. Yep.
I thought Syracuse was going to have the game handily.
And most of it, and for them to of course win by that much, I think going into it they were also Maryland was only like a 2-point favorite, and from a lot of the things we were seeing out of Syracuse last year, of course of the fact that Eric Dungy's not there anymore, probably had a little bit to do with that outcome.
But Tommy DeVito is also highly touted and won the respect of a lot of people.
True.
So for me, I think Syracuse is probably the most disappointing team. Maryland is the biggest surprise in this scenario
so far. And can you imagine what that must, how that must make them feel going up against Clemson this weekend? Oh,
they've got to feel really bad about that.
I don't even know how to go about that game. It's like, I know it's probably one of the biggest, originally one of the most popular to watch, but people got to be a little bit skeptic now, I'm sure.
I thought Syracuse was going to win the ACC, and not anymore.
No.
Yeah, so the biggest surprise, Maryland's domination. Biggest disappointment, Syracuse. What would you say was your biggest disappointment of the week?
Honestly, if I were to go down, for me, it would have to. I thought Texas would have put up a little bit more of a fight against LSU, to the point where I thought like they would at least hang within the point spread, but wasn't the case.
No, a lot of people thought that Texas was going to win the game. I didn't think Texas's defense could handle LSU's offense. I didn't think Texas's offense was as prolific as LSU's offense, and I never once thought that Texas could really beat LSU.
Right.
So Texas is your biggest disappointment?
It is for what they were projecting. I thought, they would have held closer. Of course, it was, I believe, a 6.5 point spread, and they did lose by 7.
Yeah, they did lose by 7, yes.
I thought it would have been something like, it's one of those things where I guess probably shouldn't be too disappointed because it was only, of course, by the touchdown, but I thought it was going to be one of those games where it's just going to be something crazy. Like, I think it was it last year where it was Oklahoma played, where they got in the Sling Fest and they ended up winning like 48-45.
Yes, I
thought, well, yeah, to make a long story short, I thought it would have been like something crazy, like somebody would have won on a field goal or,
Yeah, so the Oklahoma-Texas game last year did come down to a game-winning field goal, at least the first one. In the Big 12 championship, it was a different situation. But in the regular season meeting between Texas and Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure Oklahoma had a 3-touchdown lead late in the game, and Texas came back to win on a game-winning field goal.
Which would have been that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised at all. I think Texas is vastly overrated. Let's just quickly run through the rest of the games. We're going to talk top 25 because if we talked about all 130 teams,
be here till
plus FCS teams,
4 a.m.
Yeah, we don't have time for all of that. The top 25, however, started off with a really good game on Friday, September 6th. Boise State Marshall. Whew, I thought Boise State was going to run away with it, but Marshall gave them all they could handle.
Called that as well. Marshall held within.
You definitely did. Boise State escaped, and I do mean escaped, with a 14-7 win. Early in that game, I believe Marshall actually had a 7-0 lead in the first quarter.
Yep.
Boise State, at the end of the second quarter, scored a touchdown.
It's one of those games where, you see here's a defense that's just playing their heart out to really just keep the team in it. And, I think, a lot of people are starting to wonder, like, well, how much more can this defense hold?
Right.
But it was, I remember, I watched pretty much that whole game, very entertaining.
Right, and it was at the end of the second quarter. And then at the beginning of the third quarter, coming out of that half, a quick 4-play touchdown drive took a minute and a half off the clock. And then there was just no more scoring after that.
Right, yep.
But still, a fantastic game between two top-level group of 5 teams, or at least this season, top-level group of 5 teams.
It seems so. I mean, the thing is, Boise State, I never really feel, comfortable to a point where I'd, guarantee anything they're going to do, because we've seen it before. They go in heavily favored in a lot of these games, and they come up short. I don't feel like they're definitely not the same powerhouse that they used to be at, say, about 8-9 years ago.
Yeah, back when they had Jared Zabransky, when they had Kellen Moore, when Doug Martin was their running back.
Yep.
Yeah, what's his name? Austin Pettis, or Will Pettis, excuse me. Austin Pettis was a wide receiver for the Dallas Desperados, the Arena Football League back in the day.
Just heave it.
Yeah, Will Pettis and I don't remember, what was the other? Oh, Young. Was it Austin Young?
About what year are you thinking?
They were on the Titus Young.
Titus Young, yep.
Yeah, Titus Young. Yeah, so they had some really prolific teams back in the day. They're still one of the top group of 5 teams, but you're not going to see them get up above, top 5 rankings anytime soon. So
a lot of close games.
Okay, yeah, a lot of close games, but I wouldn't I wouldn't be too excited about that win over Florida State because Florida State just sucks.
We got to be realistic about a lot of these, first 2 weeks of the season. You're getting a lot of smaller schools going up against powerhouses. Of course, you're not going to,
Right, and we're gonna move on now.
Yep.
Another game that was disappointing to me. Ohio State beat Cincinnati 42-0. I thought Cincinnati was a better team. I knew Ohio State was going to be a good team, but I thought Cincinnati had a better defense.
Yep.
I thought Cincinnati had a better offense. I thought Cincinnati was well prepared to come into the game and put up a fight. I still thought Ohio State would come away with a double-digit win. I did not expect it to be a 42-point win.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally projected they would say, like, they would have held within 20 of the whole game. But to actually, to go out and be blank like that was definitely a surprise.
It surprised me. I would have thought maybe a 2-touchdown game, perhaps.